Okay, we are here today with Daniel Miara, a local writer from Buffalo, to discuss his writing techniques. We are going to address all of his strengths, weaknesses, interests, personality, everything. This is riveting stuff, people. You don't want to miss it.
When you got it fired up! When you got it fired up! And then it turned and it took me an explosion and shook me. Even it screams I'm alive.
Alright, and that was a song called Tiny Little Robots by Cage the Elephant. And now here he is, everyone, Daniel Miara. How are you, Dan?
Cage the Elephant, one of my favorites. You must have played that just for me. But I'm doing great, and yourself?
I'm doing fantastic myself. So we're here today to take a look at your work, and to just get a feel for what it's like to be a writer in college. Maybe some future writers will be listening to see a real-life example of what a college student might write.
Yes, that is correct. I just wanted to share my writings from college to demonstrate my style of writing, and to show that everyone in college has things that they are good at and things that they struggle with.
Very good point there. So you brought in several pieces of your writing from your first semester. Would you mind going through each piece you brought in, and just give us a brief little description on why you chose each piece? Feel free to start wherever you want.
Okay, well, this first paper here that I have, if you'd like to take a look at it, was a reflective writing piece in which I wrote about a shoulder injury that I had back in my senior year of high school. Now, this project I did fairly well on, but my major issue was mechanics, and that is something that has always been an issue with a lot of my writing.
Would you say that this is your biggest issue with your writings? And if so, why do you think that is?
Yes, this is definitely one of my biggest weaknesses with my writing. Well, I don't think it's just me, I think it's everyone that has trouble with mechanics, but it has always been a problem for me, especially with word repetition. I often just use words over and over again just for the sake of length in a piece. If you look at the second page, third piece of this paper, I say, Saturday came, and with that it was game day. The day of a game in which our team would win, but also the day of a game I wouldn't get to finish. First of all, that's just a horrible sounding sentence, but I use game 3 times in 2 sentences. I just think it's because I am so focused on the writing and what needs to be done. Once I finish, I don't really go back and check everything as much. Even my instructor commented on the reflective piece that I need to avoid repetition and run-on sentences. I realized that I really needed to become better at revising my own work and editing it.
Okay, that's a good time to take a break here with a nice switch in topic. When we get back, we will ask Dan about the editing process, and what he did to overcome his weaknesses as a writer, and what he did to exemplify his strengths. But right now, we have This Is the Best by USS.
On your way out, turn the lights out.
Alright, and we're back. We left off with Dan introducing the topic of revision and editing. Now, Dan, did you go back to revise this reflective piece that you wrote?
No, I did not. I just used it as an example of how to show how I started out as a writer this year. But here on the next writing project, I have an analytical essay that I wrote about the extinction of dinosaurs, boringly titled Dinosaur Extinction. Now, this is where one of my strengths come into writing, because I am a very analytical writer. I love asking why and trying to figure out why things work. I see things very linear, such as if one thing happens, then that leads to the next. I don't believe you can address another aspect of something until the aspect you are discussing now is fully addressed and understood. With the extinction of the dinosaurs, I had 3 specific layers to the project. First, I addressed which each extinction theory must have, such as the iridium spike, the global climate change, and rapid extinction of species, and then went on to discuss how each theory fits that mold. I am very purpose-oriented when I write. I write things because I use them to discuss later points in my work.
Okay, and you have more than one copy here, right? So obviously you went back and revised it, correct?
Oh yeah, that's right. That was the original question. But yeah, I did have to go back and edit my project. First off, there was mechanical issues, with no surprise there. But I also have a weakness where I don't write very well for the audience that I intend to. I was planning on writing this piece here for the everyday audience to inform them, but I was writing this like it was in a scientific article for people that would already be familiar with the topic. This could have been a fine audience, but even then my writing style was weak for that type of audience. My thesis was the extinction, known as the Cretaceous Tertiary, or KT extinction, is one of the more well-known mass extinctions in the Earth's history. That right there isn't even a thesis, but no one even knows that the extinction is labeled as the KT extinction. Most people just see it as the dinosaur extinction. So I had to go back and change that to better address the audience that I wanted.
Well, what type of audience were you looking to address?
Well, I wanted this to be an informative essay for those who wanted to know more about the topic. I mean, everyone has heard of the massive meteor that allegedly caused the extinction, or how there was a whole bunch of volcanic activity that killed off the dinosaurs. So I just wanted to write in this way that explained why those theories are so widely accepted by everyone, and then to address other widely accepted theories. I just wanted to better explain this for people who were interested in the topic but weren't experts in the fields. A lot like why I chose this topic. I wasn't an expert in the field, but I was just curious about what really happened.
So then how did you better create this audience?
Well, the reason why I have such trouble trying to address a specific audience like this is partially due to the strength that I have as a writer. I write in a very linear form, like I said before, but that's because my brain works that way. I often write in a manner that is similar to a cause and effect statement, like if this happens, then that leads to the next thing, and then that leads to the next thing. This is hard sometimes for just your average reader to follow because they may not have the same thought process that I have as they're reading the project, and they shouldn't really have that process. So in the second revision, titled What Happened to the Dinosaurs, I know, terrible title, but what can I do? If you would take a look at this, I made sure to address why I was including specific parts of my essay, and why they were important to the writing. I even stated, if you look at the top of the second page, it is easier to simplify and explain each occurrence, referring to the specific events that the extinction event should have caused, for someone who may be interested in the extinction, but not someone who has done a lot of research on the topic. All through the new revised paper, I do a better job at establishing an audience with my new editing that I did, trying to make it feel as if I'm talking to the reader, like we're in a conversation rather than the reader just reading my paper.
Well, that sounds like a much easier paper to read then. So if you did that in the second revision, what led you to the final draft?
Well, this next paper is the final draft, which was used just to make everything flow better. I just fixed some mechanical errors, no surprise there, and went back to make sure that all my points flowed better. So it just sounded better as it was being read.
Always about making it easier for the reader. What a nice guy. But it's time for another musical break. When we return, we will talk about and second writing project revisions, and then we will have open phones if anyone would like to call in and ask Dan a question.
I like it when you play with my hair.
Alright, we're back. You just listened to Farrah Fawcett Hair by Capital Cities. We are here with Daniel Miara to talk about his college writing, and he now has handed me a copy of a paper. So what can you tell us about this project here? Boy, it's a thick one. It has to be over 10 pounds.
Yeah, this project was a long one, but I actually really enjoyed it. This one here probably showcases my strengths as a writer the best out of all the projects that I could have chosen. It exemplifies my analytical side because I am addressing a new topic that is very theoretical in the creation of the universe. I go on to analyze several aspects of the three creation theories, being the Big Bang Theory, creation by a god, and intelligent design, and I always ask why and how each theory works or doesn't work. One of my peers wrote about my first draft that the reasoning is sound. I don't know much about the creation myths, but from what I do know, all the facts he got are correct, and he uses them in a good way to help back his theory. These quotes from a peer review show that this is the analytical done in a very straightforward sense, so that it appears like a if this then that type of work, which I feel is the strongest part of my work. I use exactly what I need for the reader to understand what I'm saying.
So for such a big project, there had to be plenty of drafts, I assume. Do you have any more with you? And if so, what were you trying to do with each draft?
Yeah, even though this was one of my stronger papers with a lot of my strengths in it, I also did have some troubles with it. I often included a lot of filler words that I really didn't need in my project. If you would look at the paper titled God the Intelligent Cosmologist, which was the first draft of this project, you can see what I'm referring to. On the 6th page, second to last sentence, I say, the only possible way, meaning to prove how creation happened, would be to time travel, but that may not even be possible, and that's an argument for another day. That statement right there happens to be another thing that I have trouble with, and I think a lot of people do. I was lost for information to use, and I was just trying to use somewhat relevant information to stretch out my essay a little bit more, even though it was just a weak point that I was using.
Okay, so how did you address all this filler? What did you do to try and get more relevant information to use?
Well, with the aid of my instructor, I was actually still able to use this time travel point in my essay, but I changed my essay to better fit with this information. I used a more open-ended thesis statement to make a better argument that could be used for more information. This way I was able to tie back a lot of the information that I used in my original argument to make it easier for the reader to understand why I included specific information. This also allowed me to use my strength in analyzing why this information was important. One of my peers even commented on this format when he said, "It all looks to be in good linear form." And he also said, "Your paragraphs seem to be described well and flow well." I highlighted those statements if you'd like to look at them on the peer review from Aaron.
So then what leads us to the final copy?
Well, my fellow peer Aaron again also said that the order of my information was a little bit confusing, so I went back to eliminate some of the run-on thoughts and to reorder some of my points in the argument. It was really a little bit out of order the way I put it, and I tried to include a lot of information that I didn't really need to. The final draft was just right for the length and the content that I needed. This just goes to show it's good to edit your stuff, because it will eventually get you to where you need to go to get the greatest paper.
It's very interesting to see the process that one goes through as a writer while editing their work. But it's time for another break. When we come back, we will have open phones, so you guys can call in and ask Dan some questions about writing. But first, we have Harlem by New Politics. Okay, we're back, speaking here to a local college writer from Buffalo named Daniel Miara. Now Dan, we've gone over a lot of strengths and weaknesses you have as a writer, but now it's time for some questions from our listeners out there. First off, we have Richard.
Now Dan, I always have a hard time picking my topics. Do you have any tips on how to choose a topic? Or better yet, how do you choose what you are going to write about?
Well, I usually end up picking my topics based off of what really interests me. I mean, I love sports, I love to play them and watch them, so the first project that I addressed, I wrote about sports. In addition, I absolutely love theoretical sciences. That's what led me into picking the 2 topics that revolved around theories. I just love figuring out how things come to be or how they work, and those 2 topics right there just really interested me.
So whenever you were given the chance to write about anything, you often chose something that was related to your interests.
Generally, yes. We were often given chances to write about anything with our in-class writings that we did every day at the beginning of the class. I mean, we were given a starting topic, but I often just switched things around to write about things that interest me. One of my favorite topics, actually, to write about was politics. That's just something that I always have an opinion about and am pretty well informed about, and I just love talking about that.
Wait, You enjoy politics, even though you always tend to write about science in all of your other projects?
Well, I don't love writing, but if I'm gonna write, I better write about something that interests me, and politics is one of those things. Um, Especially with what's been going on a lot lately with such a dysfunctional government, especially the recent government lockdown. Um, in class writing number 9 and 11 were about the shutdown alone, and I can get pretty tense about politics, especially that topic right there. The starting point from our in-class writing in number 9 was actually videos with a lot of gore that were available to the public on the internet, but I didn't talk about that at all. I got pretty angry that day. I thought that our starting topic was going to be about the government shutdown since it just happened the night before, but it was not, and I wasn't too happy about that. So, as you can see from one of my quotes, I said, let's just spend it, referring to the government's money, on gore on the internet. That's about as useful as anything else the government spends its money on. I myself am a Republican, but that has nothing to do with the current government. I just don't like how dysfunctional it is. Currently, I can't do anything about that, though, so I just often write about it, to voice about it, if I have to write about something, because it's just a very relevant topic to what's actually going on right now.
So is that it? Politics and sciences? Is that all you ever write about?
Well, no, not really. I guess it just kind of depends. I don't really enjoy writing, so if I have to write, I'm going to write about something that I enjoy. And one of those things just happens to be humor. I like to read about funny things and then just write about it because I just love seeing humor and stuff, and it's just the type of guy that I am. But if you'd like to look at in-class writing number 21, you'll see, which was about murderers who are willing to make killing lists. I say that I'm the type of guy who likes to try and make lists, but forgets that I made a list and tries to remember everything and just forgets anyways. I often made just little tiny jokes in a lot of my in-class writings that might not have been terribly funny, but I just like to put a little humor in the stuff that I write about. I also like to analyze a lot of things when I see something that's interesting. If you take a look at in-class writing number 4 right here, that was about an ice wave type thing that was moving on the ground. I'd never seen something like that before, so I went on to ask questions about it and tried to analyze why it was happening. I guess it really just all depends on what's going on and what I have to do when I write that determines what I actually will end up writing about.
Well, we've gotten a good look into the life of a college writer. Do you have any final words for the listeners out there? Any final words of wisdom?
Well, as much as people can dislike writing, it can actually be something that is enjoyable to do. You gotta write about things that you enjoy in life and things that really get you motivated. If you don't know where to start, just start talking about things that interest you. And when you're writing, just talk how you speak in life. Don't try to sound too fancy and official. Like I said before, writing can be seen as a conversation with the reader, so you just have to write like you would speak to them. If you're humorous and laid back, then write that way. If you like to analyze and wonder why things happen, write that way. And know that your first draft isn't going to be perfect. Be open to criticism and change your writing for the better. I did that, and look here, I'm getting an interview on this podcast.
That you did. And thank you for coming in to speak with us. I know finals week is right around the corner for all those college students, and we here at the studio and our listeners appreciate you taking the time to address what it is like to be a college writer. And now I would like to thank all of the listeners for listening to this podcast. We will leave you off with some Guns and Ammunition by July Talks. Tune in next time as we go over a critical question. Tomatoes, are they a fruit or a vegetable? Goodbye, everyone.
My guns and ammunition do very different things. If you're looking for tradition,